Well, welcome one and all to the Gary Neville Podcast from Goodison Park on a Sunday evening, after which Arsenal have just squeaked past Everton in terms of scoreline, Gary, though they had lots of the ball. What conclusions are you drawing?
It was critical, essential that Arsenal got the job done, that they couldn't come away. I think even the draw would have been a big disappointment. I know it's very early in the season. You can't afford to fall too many points behind Manchester City. We know that, but it's more of a mentality thing about coming to Merseyside. The emotion that exists in this city when you play football, they'll find it the same when they go to Manchester. We found it the same sort of as Manchester United all those years ago, coming to Merseyside, going to the big clubs in London. It's the toughest tests that you face, and Arsenal have had real problems here. You'll probably tell me better than I will, but they've won 2 times in the last 8 years. Is that right?
Something like that. And you're right to identify Merseyside, because their record across the road is awful too. Yeah. They've failed to win until today on their last 10 visits to the city of Liverpool. Yeah,
and I think what Merseyside and what Liverpool and Everton will do is find out about your character. It will really test you. The crowd will get on top of you. Obviously, the tight grounds, they're old grounds, although Liverpool has had a bit of redevelopment. And obviously Liverpool have been one of the best teams in the last few years, but really here as well. And the way the game was drifting, Arsenal started off brilliantly in the first 20 minutes and should have been in front. They should have killed the game in that period. But once they don't, do the doubts start to creep in? Do the doubts start to creep in for the players, for the coach, for the fans, thinking, here we go again, the game gets to 60 minutes at 0-0, and you think, if they have one attack, they get a set piece. Tarkowski goes forward for a header. You mentioned it on commentary. So I think for them to get the job done here today was a must, and they've done that. And 1-0 is a very satisfying scoreline for a team that are looking to try and win a title this season, because if you can hold your concentration, it's all about concentration, making sure your defenders, your goalkeeper, the rest of your players in your team, when Everton are throwing those balls into the box in the last part of the game, are all switched on, and they were.
Yeah, and it wasn't what you would call an archetypal pretty Arsenal win, was it? Quite the opposite, and they might take more satisfaction out of that very fact. So it's a difficult question to answer in the time we have, but how do you align them with the others that are right up the top there? Liverpool, Manchester City, Spurs, Arsenal, that's what's developing. Plus, we should say Brighton, of course. Yeah. Where are Arsenal in that mix?
Arsenal, obviously City are at the top. We have to say that at the moment, in every sense. I've said that Arsenal will win the league this season, and for that to happen, they have to be in it with 10 games to go, the same place they were last year. So we're very early days, and I always think this is a disruptive period in between the September, October and November internationals, where players come back at different times. Some have played, some haven't played. You haven't had time to play together. Then you've got Champions League starting, so it's a really interesting sort of period of the season. Nothing's won at this time of the season, but it can be lost. And I think when you're playing 3 games a week, which Arsenal will be for the foreseeable future, you have to be in a position whereby when you don't always play well, which you won't, that you win the game. And clean sheets are critical. What cost Arsenal at the end of last season? There were many things, obviously. A couple of injuries. They lost their fluidity, their tempo of the play. They gave leads away, but they were conceding goals, and it undermines everything that you're trying to. I'm not saying you can't concede a goal and win a title, but you really do need to build clean sheets. You need to look defensively stable, and with that back 4 that played today, I thought Zinchenko was very good on the ball, and the other 3 was very solid defensively. And then when Tomiyasu comes on, which I think was a really smart move by Mikel Arteta, just to give them that extra strength, they then look really solid. And we've said about City last season, City have played last season for all this Pep's football with 4 centre-backs at times in a back 4, with obviously John Stones sometimes at right back, sometimes Ake at left back, Kanji, and then obviously Diaz. And you think about Arsenal today, they had 4 players who I think could play centre-back for them, playing in a back 4. So we talk about all the beautiful football that these 2 teams play. You've got to really make sure that you don't undermine your performances by conceding from set pieces or from giving goals away against what was really a basic performance from Everton, but they've had hiccups here before. And I think that dressing room, going back to Merseyside, going back to London tonight, will have been kicking themselves if they hadn't got the win. They'll be really happy in there. Not emotional, not getting carried away, but really happy. The goalkeeper will be happy having been brought in. The defenders will be really proud about the clean sheet and how they've resisted a lot of Everton pressure at times in the game. And then obviously the manager will be happy. The concentration of the whole team, I think, was really important. It was a good focus from them.
From an Everton point of view, we're heading into the same old narrative for, second, third, fourth year in a row. Do you see any escape, not necessarily from relegation, we'll find that out in March, April, May, but from this repetitive narrative?
Yeah, I mean, how many people are in here today? 40,000 people, 37,000 of them from obviously Everton fans, and I mean, this is a wonderful ground. I used to love coming here as a player. We had fantastic battles. It was an up and atom type of game. There was a great spirit. There just seems to be a little bit dreary. Not a little bit dreary, it's dreary. It is. Let's be clear, the football's a bit dreary. They're living off scraps. What are they hanging on to? What are they coming to the game looking forward to, the Everton fans? And look, they'll have easier games moving forward, and we'll find out, as you say, about whether they'll stay up. But they're hanging on by the skin of their teeth in every sense, it would seem, in the last couple of seasons. And you're looking for signs about whether they can actually sort of, if you like, impress and improve. Too early, probably, but they've had a really poor start. And, they've got to keep their players fit. If they don't keep their players fit, they're going to have big problems. Just one thing I wanted to say, going back to Arsenal, and it's watching Ødegaard, actually. Just thought of that as I was talking then, about Everton being quite dreary to watch. Ødegaard, it takes a lot, I think, to say this, but when you think of sort of the most beautiful football players that we've watched in the last 7 or 8 years in the Premier League, I always think of David Silva and Kevin De Bruyne being just something that you watch and you're like, that's the way to play football. And Ødegaard, I'm not saying that he's as good as David Silva or Kevin De Bruyne. I think he's got a bit to go in his career, but he's getting to a point now whereby when I watch him play, it is so smooth, it's so silky. I knew he was always a talented player, but we're now talking about something that is very different than just talented. This is real class. I know that, to be fair, a lot of people know that, but I think it now starts to be, he now starts to be mentioned in the sort of realms. Pep Guardiola, I think, if you said take one player out of this Arsenal team, I think he'd take him in an absolute heartbeat. He would absolutely break into that Manchester City team because he's a beautiful player to watch. And every time I watch him, he gets better and better. Arsenal must recognise what they have. I'm talking about the Arsenal players and feed him as much as they possibly can in the game. The more he gets on the ball in the final third, the more football matches, assists and goals that they'll have in matches.
No, he is a beautiful player. Let's change tack. Sorry. Manchester United. I know you've already been out.
Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, well, quite. Well, you've been outspoken already this weekend. Of course you have. I know you were at Old Trafford yesterday and saw the game against Brighton. So let me ask you a straight question. Amid all of this mountain of issues that appears to be around Manchester United, given what we've seen over the first month plus of the season, what now are Manchester United fans realistically entitled to expect this season? I mean, how relevant are they in the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or not at all?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's early enough to still say that the ambitions of what they thought that they would, we all thought they would achieve this season, or most thought they would achieve, which is, to be fair, to finish where they finished last season in third, and then still try and win a trophy. I mean, that still doesn't change. I'm worried about that. I was worried at the start of the season. I didn't think that the transfer window, there was this feeling that Manchester United got the business done early and that was good, but I did concern myself. I was concerned that the players that they brought in wouldn't improve them from last season. I never thought for 1 second that they would challenge Manchester City and Arsenal from the players that they brought in. That would have needed a Kane-type signing to do that, or Rice as an example. They didn't have the money to do those types of signings. So I think from my point of view, they're not very good at the moment. There's no hysteria. I went to the game yesterday as a fan to think that, could I be surprised? And you're always optimistic. I've never walked over that forecourt at Old Trafford and not been optimistic, because that's the job of a football fan, going to any ground where you support your team. But honestly, I think 72,000 Manchester United fans in that stadium walking over there who are informed, who know Brighton, who know their current team, I don't think any of them were surprised with what they saw. Before the game, there was that feeling of, let's see what happens. Take a point. Those types of comments as you go in speaking to people, and we're like, you never know. And then Manchester United started brightly in that first 10, 15 minutes. But the minute that Brighton started to compose themselves, the centre-backs get on the ball with the goalkeeper and pop a few passes into midfield. I mean, they dismantled Manchester United. They dismantled them by doing what Brighton do. Those two players, Welbeck and Lallana, dropping into the pockets, the two wide players being high, sort of Martinez and Lindelof being caught in no man's land at times in between. And then I have to say that yesterday, we quite often say about football players win football matches, it's the most obvious thing to say, and that systems don't win matches. We hear that often. I'm sorry, systems do have an impact on matches. There's this thing at Old Trafford, so dug outside, there's no space. This is an old wives. It's not an old wives' tale. This is absolutely true. I've played right back on the side of that stadium. There's no space. On the far side, you have acres of space away from the dugout. So the space in the game is always for the opposition on the other side of the pitch. I don't know why that is. It's always happened at Old Trafford. And yesterday I was sat on the opposite side of the pitch. And in the first half, Ericsson was being asked to get out to Brighton's right back and being asked to get out to Brighton's right-hand side with Reguilon. And that's where the first goal came from. And Ericsson had to get out there because he was playing narrow in a sort of a 3, like a diamond it was. In the second half, McTominay's over on this side. And McTominay can run, by the way. He's got big energy. He was legless at times. This wasn't... honestly, I was watching those lads yesterday very closely. This wasn't a massive lack of effort or this players chucking the towel in. There's none of that sort of stuff. They were trying their very best. But McTominay couldn't get out to their left side in the second half. And that's where the 2 goals came from. And I was surprised that they kept that such narrow midfield and didn't have the 4-3-3 or the 4-5-1, because Manchester United's pitch, even though it may come up in size among the same as other pitches, it just always feels massive in the wide areas. It always has done, particularly on that far side away from the dugout. And Brighton have got the system of play, the quality of players to be able to dismantle you and find the spare pass. And I always used to think at Old Trafford, don't give the team an easy out in terms of finding a way out with a pass so that you're all running back to your own goal. It was always almost a thing that Sir Alex Ferguson would say. So they had an easy out yesterday, and they dismantled Manchester United, and they made them look quite ordinary at times. Even though Manchester United still had some moments in the game, it was a worrying, concerning day in that Brighton were better than Manchester United. Let's be clear. Brighton were fantastic. They did what they did with a group of players that maybe on paper aren't as sexy, aren't as valuable, certainly not as valuable, but they're the better team.
Sure. So, listen, I'm just a simple football fan. Erik ten Hag is obviously a very, very good football coach. Nobody disputes that. So in circumstances like this, what happens on Monday morning? I mean, how does he make that team of very, very good professional footballers better?
Look, he has to continue to keep doing what he's doing, which, follow his beliefs, his values, his principles. The only thing I would say is, look, how popular is Sancho in the dressing room? How popular is Maguire in the dressing room? How popular is Anthony in the dressing room? He's got some bugs in there that we don't know from the outside. What discomfort and uncertainty is being created on the inside. You've got a player at the moment who's changing probably in the first team dressing room, but obviously over with the academy. You've got obviously Harry Maguire, who's been captain of these players, by the way, 12 months ago, who's now almost in some ways alienated in, third, fourth, fifth centre half. So he's got some situations in there which I don't know the damage that's having. But in terms of his work on the pitch, I don't think Erik ten Hag will change. And the fact of the matter is, there is many a manager over the last 10, 12 years since Sir Alex Ferguson left, good manager, that have found challenges at Manchester United. What I'm hoping at the moment is this is just a difficult start to the season, and it's not a repeat of what we've seen previously, where we've started to see it become challenging for Mourinho, for Van Gaal, for Moyes, for obviously Ranić, and for then Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. So I hope it's not the beginning of that. I hope that ultimately, no Manchester United fan at this moment in time, they may have some simple questions yesterday about the system and stuff like that, and we all do. That's fine, it's no problem. But there's no Manchester United fan that I know that's got a brain that's obviously most angry with Erik ten Hag. What they want really is a change of ownership, and they want stability, and they want a group of players that are committed. And I don't think the players aren't committed. I just wonder how good they are. That's my concern. And the club have been pulled from pillar to post over this last 10, 11 years from a sporting point of view by their manager's wish on recruitment. And it's happened again. So, they are Erik ten Hag's players. As Ole wanted the players that he wanted, as Jose brought the lads that he wanted in, Lukaku and Pogba and all those lads. And Van Gaal went for a very technical type of player that could, loads of left-footed centre-backs and left-backs and stuff like that. They've all brought in who they wanted to bring in. And I thought this time that there would be a more stronger sporting project behind the scenes that would enable Manchester United to bring in a group of players. But no, they have allowed, I think, the manager again to influence the signings. And that's my concern with the club. They've got no strength at the very top. And if you're talking about sort of what would be the best sporting operators in this country and in Europe, Manchester United don't have them. They just don't. And that's my concern. Look, there's no hysteria. We are where we are. But yesterday was a sobering day, and a day that I don't think many people were surprised by. And they go to Munich in midweek, and then an awkward one at Burnley next Saturday night. Munich, you'd fear the worst a little bit, just generally how good Munich are. But you never know. You know, there's some players there that can step up. But at this moment in time yesterday was a sort of a day that I went there sort of with hope. And you shouldn't really be going to Old Trafford with hope when you're playing Brighton at home. And that's no disrespect to Brighton. But the amount of money that Manchester United have spent on that squad, it should be a lot better. And they've signed, obviously, Onana, they've signed Højlund, and they've signed Mount. And does that make them better than what they were? The Højlund lad's got promise, but I feel for him a little bit that he's been asked to carry almost the whole of the team in some ways. And look, let's see what happens. But there are concerns. There are concerns definitely, and concerns from the fans, and concerns I think generally just within the club. It doesn't look right at this moment in time, and it needs to stabilise. Sure.
Well, we've probably scratched that sore enough.
Yeah.
The other big one that appears to be underachieving clearly is Chelsea. I know you didn't see, you saw bits of the game against Bournemouth while we were waiting for the Everton game to kick off. But I'll ask you the same question of then. What are their supporters under the current circumstances entitled to believe of their team?
Yeah, look, it's just a little bit mad, isn't it? It's chaotic. We've said it for 15 months, the amount of players that they bring in. I saw Palmer come on today, who's been bought for 40 million quid from City. You think, there's another one. Wherever Manchester United, there's that lack of stability at the top of the club, that lack of surety. There's no doubt that obviously with Abramovich leaving and the sort of the Bowley project coming in, that no danger at all with what's happened. There's been everything but stability. In fact, it's been absolute madness in terms of every department in the club changing. So they just need to stop. Sometimes I say this in my own life. If I feel like I'm spinning on a roundabout too fast, you need to jump off and not really do anything. Just stop and allow people just to sort of continue and let things slow down. Because at the moment, it must be like that for Pochettino, for the players, for the fans, not knowing who's going to play from one game to the next. And yeah, when you have that type of project and it's a little bit mad and it doesn't look coordinated, it doesn't look like there's a sort of, a principle or a value. I know they've signed young players on long contracts, but it does seem, like you say, something that I'm not sure about. And Mr. Pochettino, I have great faith in as a coach, as I do Erik ten Hag. I think he's a fantastic coach. So I think both clubs are just going to have to let their managers almost work it out over a period of time. And I think for both clubs, it's going to take time because there's no doubt Chelsea are nowhere near right, as United are in the same boat.
Okay, well, let's finish on a positive, Gary. We've dealt with most of the big clubs. We can't do them all every time. But insofar as we've got a North London derby coming up, we've just seen Arsenal play. Spurs have gone and stolen a fabulous win yesterday. How do you see that power battle, Spurs-Arsenal?
Yeah, and to be honest, look, I said when we went to watch Tottenham versus Manchester United a good few weeks ago now that they're going to have a lot of fun this season, the Tottenham fans. And I think that's really important that your team has that cohesion with the manager and it has that feeling that he belongs there. And there's no doubt with Postecoglou that they believe that this is a man that's a good man. He speaks up in interviews. He's got an honesty about him. He plays good football. He takes risks, which I think is really important for Spurs fans. They've lost Harry Kane. Look, at this moment in time, I would say it's absolutely fantastic. But we need to just review it in January because that's, I'm sure, what the Tottenham sort of coaching staff will be thinking. Very early in the season, not a time to get carried away, a time to keep working. And next weekend is a showcase game, which I can't wait for. It's the game actually since I've joined Sky Sports. I've done Merseyside derbies, I've done Manchester derbies, and I've had some fantastic games in both of those. But the game that's actually for me been the one that I've actually sometimes enjoyed most has been the North London derby in terms of just the electricity in the game. Sometimes the games have been magnificent, there have been goals. So I'm really looking forward to next weekend. It should be an immense game. And I think, to be fair, like I say, probably one of the most enjoyable games I do for Sky actually is that game.
Absolutely, it's always a belter, and we're very much looking forward to it. That's the jewel in next week's crown.
Yep.
For this weekend, Gary. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter.